Good morning, folks. Welcome to this morning's webinar from QuickBooks. Don't worry, we're not starting yet. I'm just going to do a quick little technical check to make sure that you can all hear me okay. If you can hear my dulcet tones on your GoToWebinar control panel that you normally find in the top right-hand corner of your screen, you'll see that there is a little hand symbol on there. If you can hear me all right at the moment, if you can just click on that hand symbol for me, it would be much appreciated. Thank you, Derek. Thank you, Ellie, Gary, Gail, lovely. Okay, Jacqueline, Jane, lots of people in this morning. I think we've got about 400 people coming in. So thanks to all of you. That's great. So we know that the audio is working okay. And I know that the slides up there, so you can see all of that okay as well. So you've just got time to make yourselves comfortable, grab yourselves a quick drink, and we'll be starting in a couple of minutes' time. Thank you. Good morning and welcome to this morning's webinar from Intuit QuickBooks, which is all about filing your Making Tax Digital VAT submission with confidence. Not just filing it, but filing it with confidence. My name is Michael. I'm the training manager here at QuickBooks. And more importantly, with me today, I have our top trainer, and that's Rochelle. How are you doing, Rochelle?
Good, thanks. Hello, Michael. Hi, everybody.
So today, folks, what we're going to take you on is a little journey on how to file your Making Tax Digital VAT submission. And what you'll actually find as we go through that step-by-step process is it's actually fairly straightforward once you get into the product. But we'll explain the bits around the outside of that as well, just so you've got a full idea in terms of what you need to do. Just a little bit of housekeeping before we start. You are all in listen-only mode, and we did a little check earlier on just to make sure the audio was working okay. So you can hear us, but you can't speak back to us, which begs the question, how do you ask a question? Well, you'll see on your GoToWebinar control panel that you normally find in the top right-hand corner of the screen, you'll see that there is a hand symbol on there. You'll see there's a question box on there. So if you do want to ask any questions as we're going along, please just go to the questions box on the GoToWebinar control panel and fire your question in there. Please don't use the chat box. I'm not going to be looking at the chat box at all, but if you find the questions box, type your question in and it'll come straight through to us. If I can stop Rochelle as she's going through the demo, I will do, but if not, we'll save the questions up until later on. Now, to be fair, folks, we have about 400 people on the webinar today. It's unlikely I'm going to get through most of the questions, or it's unlikely I'm going to get through all of the questions, but we'll certainly get through as many as we possibly can. Today's session is being recorded, so if you do miss anything, don't worry, because you'll receive an email around about an hour or so after today's webinar is finished, and that email will have a link to a recording of today's session. So if you have missed anything or you've been dragged away unexpectedly halfway through, don't worry, because the recording will come to you automatically about an hour after we've finished today. And then the final thing that I just wanted to talk about is that I'm going to ask you a couple of poll questions as we're going through today's session, just to get a feel for where you are with things before we start and as we go through and then at the end. And the poll question will pop up. It should pop up above anything else that you've got on your screen at the moment. And all you'll need to do is just give me a quick answer in terms of how you're feeling. So let's try that out to start off with. And the first poll question that I'm going to ask you is, thinking about making tax digital, on a scale of 1 to 5, how confident do you feel for your first Making Tax Digital filing? So on a scale of 1 to 5, how confident do you feel for your first Making Tax Digital filing? 1, not very confident at all. Not confident at all. 2, not very confident. 3, kind of all right. 4, somewhat confident. 5, extremely confident. Okay, so I can see that 70% of you have voted. I'll just give you a couple of extra seconds to make your choice. So on a scale of 1 to 5, how confident do you feel about your first Making Tax Digital filing? 1 being low, 5 being high. Fabulous. So we're up to about 82% voted so far. So I'm going to close the poll off there and we'll take a quick look at the results. Okay, so we've got a fair old spread there. 23% of you not confident at all, 30% not very confident, 28 somewhere in the middle, 18 kind of all right, and we've got 1% up at that top end that are saying that you're all good with this and actually just get on with it, Mike. So that's what I'm going to do now. Let's get rid of those. And what I'm going to do now is pass you over to Rochelle, who's going to take you through the bulk of today's session.
Okay, thanks very much, Michael. So I'm just showing you the agenda now of what we're going to cover during this webinar. So the introduction that Michael has handled. The next thing I'll speak about is signing up for MTD on the HMRC website. Once we've got that done, we'll get into QuickBooks and we'll look at how we turn on MTD. After that, you'll see a standard VAT submission within QuickBooks. We will also show you the bridging software and how you submit via the bridging software. And finally, at the end, we'll have time to answer some of your questions. So what I'm going to do next is I'm just going to show you onto maybe the HMRC website. So before we actually get into QuickBooks, there are a couple of really important steps that you need to complete first. The first will be to have a government gateway ID. Okay, now some people may have this already set up, some people will have to do it now. Once you have the government gateway ID, the next step is to register for MTD. So I'm on the HMRC website. I'll actually just show you a slightly different screen, signing up for Making Tax Digital. So this is available from the HMRC website. You can see that address bar across the top, and it gives you all of the information that you need to know about signing up. If I scroll down a little bit, I can show you that you can jump to any of the specific contents. So this is quite a good page because it just gives you all the information. So what you'll need, sign up, after you sign up, and get help. So if you're having any issues with it, if I just scroll to the sign up, you can see that it will actually take me to sign up your own business using the government gateway ID if you haven't got it, and it talks you through that. So I think, Michael, you have a couple of questions just to see where people are with that stage of the process.
I certainly do. So as Rochelle was talking about there's two things that you need to have sorted out before you can actually make your filing. The first thing is that you need to have sorted yourself out with a government gateway ID. So a quick poll for you all. How many of you have already got your government gateway ID? Simple yes or no answer. 75% voted so far. I'll give it a couple more seconds. Okay, I'll close it off now and I'll share the results with you so we can see. Fantastic. So 95% of you have already got yourselves a government gateway ID. That's fantastic news. The 5% that haven't, that's going to be your starting point. And then once you've got your government gateway ID, the second thing that you need to do is you need to register with HMRC for Making Tax Digital specifically. So our next quick poll is how many of you have already registered for Making Tax Digital with HMRC? Lovely, can see all those votes flying in. Simple yes or no answer, folks. And we're up to 85%, so I'll just close that off there and share the results. Cool, so 41% of you are already registered, 59% have still got that step to go. And certainly we just know from experience that that can take a little while to turn things around with HMRC. So it's definitely in your interest to look to do that sooner rather than later. But all in all, it looks like you're in pretty good shape. So back to you, Rochelle.
Yeah, perfect. That looks like people are kind of ready to go. So they've got their government gateway ID, so they'll be registering once they're ready to submit their first MTD VAT return. So once we've looked at that and the stuff that you do outside QuickBooks, I think we're ready now to take a look at the QuickBooks software. So I'm just going to show you on my screen. You can see that I'm logged into a company that is called Long for Successful Events. So this is my company, and my next step will be to turn on MTD. So just a quick navigation. I'm in the dashboard, so that's where I'm getting the snapshot of what's happening on my books. Some of the key tools will be your create button at the top, where you'll create all your bookkeeping transactions. So I'll be entering all my transactions for the period on QuickBooks. I'll be selecting the VAT codes from there, and then your gear icon up here gives you some of the most kind of popular tools in QuickBooks and also your settings. Down along the left navigation, you have access to all of your, I suppose, the most important centers really in QuickBooks of various lists. And if you move down along that screen, you'll see I've got the taxes option. So that's where I need to go to next, because my first step will be to actually turn on MTD in this file. So I click on taxes so that I go into the taxes center. So I'm in the taxes center. I can see just a summary of the information across the top for this VAT return. So every time I entered a sales transaction in the system, I applied a VAT code such as 20% standard. Anytime I had money out, I applied a VAT code, and that's, you can see across the top in the amount that's paid on purchases. So once you apply the right VAT codes, QuickBooks will calculate how much VAT you have due, and you'll see that displayed across the top. So as long as you are confident that you have all the transactions in on QuickBooks and you've applied the right VAT code, QuickBooks should do the rest. Now, before you're ready to submit your first return, what you will check as part of the standard process is you probably reconcile all your bank accounts to ensure you've got all the data in QuickBooks, and then you will also view some of your VAT reports, and that gives you a chance to just review and check and confirm that you've applied the right VAT codes. You can see some of your reports from here if you click the view reports option, and then you can see in the action column beside submit return, if I click the drop down arrow, I can view some of the important VAT details for this particular return that is due. Okay, so we've done all of that. We have, we're confident that our VAT return is completed correctly. So now we're going to turn on MTD. Now you'll see the option in the top right hand corner. It says get ahead with digital tax, and you've got the option let's go. Now, if you don't see that option because maybe you've clicked that grey cross in the corner, you can also do by clicking edit VAT and edit settings, and you can see the option to turn on MTD is down across the bottom. I'll actually choose the let's go option because I can see it on screen. So I'm turning on MTD, I click let's go, and it just asks me to confirm that I have actually signed up for Making Tax Digital and I have received a confirmation from HMRC. So I click yes to confirm, and then I click turn on MTD. Next, it just confirms that we're going to put it all under one roof. So I click continue. And then I'm given this 3 steps to make your tax digital. So the first step will be to sign into HMRC, and I'll be doing that using my Government Gateway ID. Then I'll be authorizing QuickBooks to talk to HMRC. Now that's a process called OAuth, O-A-U-T-H. And the reason why I'm giving you that word is because you might see that referenced on the HMRC website. So that's the OAuth process, which grants authority for QuickBooks to talk to HMRC. And then finally, once that's done, I can go back to the VAT Center. So let's go. And it's going to take me to the HMRC website. At this point, I'll be able to put in my details. So this gives authority for QuickBooks to interact with HMRC. It gives me just a summary of the steps, and then it just shows me as well the notification that this authority will last for 18 months. After 18 months, we will give you a notification within the software just to repeat this process. What you'll see is it actually just takes a couple of minutes, but it's just a reminder you'll have to do it again in 18 months. So I click continue. And then using my Government Gateway ID, I'm using test credentials today. I just need to click sign in. And then the final stage of this OAuth process is to grant authority. So I click on that. That's going to QuickBooks speak to HMRC.
Hey, Rochelle, I think we just lost your sound a little bit there. So if you can just run back over that last bit again, that'd be great.
Is this for which point did I leave?
I'm still getting a break on your sound at the moment. So it's just that last page, that last screen.
Okay, so what I did is I clicked the option which said grant authority, which was to basically allow QuickBooks to talk to HMRC. So once I'd signed in with my Government Gateway ID, I had clicked grant authority, then that was allowing my software to talk to HMRC. And the second thing that happened then is MTD was turned on in my file. Is that okay?
That's great, thank you.
Okay, perfect. So now I'm ready to go back into my VAT Center, so I will click Take a Look. Okay, so perfect. MTD has been enabled, and an important thing to note on my screen right now is that Making Tax Digital enabled icon that appears beside VAT. Now that Making Tax Digital is submitting the MTD. Okay, so we've turned on MTD in the file to actually submit our VAT. So you notice at the bottom I have my open, so you can see the details there, and the action column is to submit.
Hey, Rochelle. Hey, Rochelle. Sorry about this, but your sound is breaking up all of the time. Maybe if you can move your laptop a little bit, try and find a strong signal.
Okay, I'm just going to move across.
Bear with us a second, folks. I've had a couple of questions coming in. There was a question around if you sign up for MTD with HMRC, do they get access to your QuickBooks account, or is all they see what you actually submit as a return? They don't get access to any of your details at all, folks. The only things that HMRC will actually see will be the final figures that are actually submitted. So HMRC can't get into your QuickBooks account and look at any of the details. So you don't need to worry about that one. Can we log in to HMRC through QuickBooks? Says Yolani, and no, you need to register with HMRC directly, and then as Rochelle was just describing, you go through that OAuth process, which actually then links your QuickBooks account using your government gateway ID and your MTD registration. That's what links it all together. So you need to do your HMRC stuff outside, and then in effect bind QuickBooks and HMRC together, but you can't get into HMRC through QuickBooks. It's just a link that's made while you're making that submission. So that's Sam and Yolani. Eloise has got a question, which is, would this then enable you to see your clients in HMRC? Eloise, if you are an accountant, then the process is different and uses a thing called the ASA account. Today's webinar is all for our small businesses who are looking to work directly or file directly. If you need the accountant version of this, then I would take a look at our webinar page, which has got all of the pre-recorded webinars on there for our accountant filing. Rochelle, how are you getting on over there?
Yeah, I'm okay. So I've moved position. If it happens again, just give me a shout and I'll try one other area, which might be good for it. So I think I'm in a good spot. Yeah. Okay, perfect. So you can see the open return is displayed underneath open returns, and the option is to submit return. So that's what I'm going to do. I click submit return. And you can see across the top, I've got a summary of the information. So my accounting period, my start date, end date, and my submission date. You'll notice we're submitting this one a bit late, but I hope you'll bear with us. It's just a testing environment, so we're not going to get any penalties. So that's a summary of the tax due, and then you can see the 9-box summary across that page. So this is the information that will be sent to HMRC, the figures that are in those 9 boxes. I'm comfortable with those because I've gone through my checks and I'm happy that I've included all the information. So I'm ready to submit to HMRC, which is the option that you see in the bottom right-hand corner. I select submit to HMRC. Again, I get a summary of the information, and then I just tick the box to declare that the information is true and complete. Then I'm going to click submit to HMRC. We're going to see a connection. Now, once it's been accepted, in the normal environment, in your live account, you'll actually get a receipt number. I'm not expecting to see the receipt number today, just because we are in a testing environment, so where you see receipt number loading, in your normal accounts, you'll get a live number. So we don't have the official receipt, obviously, because this is a test. But the good news about this is you're going to get a confirmation email. So whoever actually submits the return is going to get a confirmation along with a receipt number, and you can actually view and download your VAT return here. Just going to click into that option to just show you a summary of the information. And again, this is also an area where the receipt number in the live process will come across the top. So that is your standard submission. So I'm going to go back into the VAT and I'm going to click Done. And that's a standard submission. So you can see now that that's been accepted. The next step obviously will be to record the payment. Okay, but that's your process. So we've looked at how we turn on MTD. That was the first step. Once we had it turned on, the next step was to submit the return, and that's it, done via the standard filing.
Cool, so, fantastic. I've got a couple of questions. Sam says, my last return was to the end of April 2019. Do I have to enter all details for all transactions prior to that point from the start of the tax year, or can I just enter from 1st of May?
So I'm not fully sure what the question means, but essentially for the MTD VAT return, it's any returns starting from the 1st of April to the end of, so it's the first period, I guess. So if your period starts 1st of April, then you will need to register for MTD and do it. If you're filing it through QuickBooks for that period, you will need all the transactions on the system. With one little difference, which is that if partial data is in the system, you could use bridging. So I guess the question is, you know, if you look at those figures across the top, and if that includes all the information because you have all the information in for that period on QuickBooks, then yes, you can submit the return in the way I've just shown you.
Okay, thank you for that. Folks, I can see there's a number of questions coming in. As Sam says, thank you for that as well, very clear. I can see there's a number of questions coming in, folks, about problems you may have had getting connected with HMRC in the first place, or status blocked and things like that. I'm really sorry, folks, but there isn't anything that we can do as part of this webinar to help you with that. If you are having any issues with HMRC, then our only suggestion is obviously to get back into HMRC and they'll help you to actually get them resolved. There isn't anything that we can do, I'm afraid, in terms of being able to help you with those sorts of questions. Apologies, but there's nothing we can do on it. Giuseppe says, and I think this is looking at those boxes that were coming up. How do I fill in box 2?
So box 2, so it'll depend on, so box 2, let me just check what box 2 says.
Still there, Rochelle? It's all gone quiet. Hello, Rochelle.
If you look at edit rates, you can see a list of all your VAT rates and you can read a description of how they're used. So you can see all the ECS, ECG are turned on there, which means I'll be...
Michelle, we totally lost your sound again until about 15 seconds ago. So if you could just take us through that again, that would be great.
Okay, so I'm just showing you where the VAT rates are. So if you are trading with a country in Europe, when you enter transactions, these are the ECS, ECG, those are the VAT codes you need to select on those transactions. Once you apply those in the right way, the correct boxes will be populated on your VAT return.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. There's a question here from, where is it now? Just lost it. Darren. Darren says, I'm currently on the flat rate VAT scheme. How is that calculated in QuickBooks?
So if you are on the flat rate scheme, you will need to ensure that in your VAT settings, you have ticked the box. So if I go into edit VAT and edit settings, you can tick the box to say you're on the flat rate scheme. You can enter in your industry flat rate percentage, and then QuickBooks will calculate the correct VAT return for you in that case.
Perfect. Thank you very much for that one. Lee says, can you show please how to adjust the VAT on the return?
So there are different ways to adjust the VAT return. Many people do it slightly different and it depends on the scheme. So I would maybe speak to your accountant about it. You can adjust via a journal entry. you can also use the adjustment buttons on the return. So if I show you submit return, you can see there is an adjust button, and that is used by people on a special scheme. However, I would just maybe consult my accountant or a tax advisor just to ensure they're happy with how that would appear on my books. But those are the main ways of adjusting your VAT returns: journal entries or through the adjust buttons.
Absolutely, folks. Anything that you're not sure of, then speak with your accountants and get them to help you with it. Luke says, once the VAT return is submitted in QuickBooks, it's still showing as open in your example. How do we close this off and mark it as filed?
No, so in this, so the open returns there. So essentially, this is a testing environment. So without going too much into the background, it might be a little bit unusual. For example, I can never use this this particular company again to do what I've just shown you. So in your normal return, that won't be the case. Once you have it submitted, it won't be showing up there.
Lovely, thank you very much for that. A couple of questions around direct debits. So if an authority existed for HMRC to recover tax automatically through direct debit, will this continue with MTD?
I think you'd have to consult with HMRC about that, because it looks like that's something to do. So the question is whether the same direct debit details could be used. I'm not 100% on that. You'll need to just consult with HMRC about those.
Okay, no problem. There's a number of questions that are coming in around when people have to start filing for MTD. You know, I've got April to do, I've got May to do, I've got June to do. What are the rules in terms of when MTD kicks in and when you have to actually file?
Well, I suppose there's two things. Once you register for MTD on the HMRC website and you have confirmation that you've registered, at that point, you will have to submit your returns in MTD way. You can't go back to the old way, and that's regardless of when you register. It becomes compulsory to register for MTD for any VAT filings that are beginning the 1st of April.
Perfect.
So
okay.
It's compulsory to register. If you registered before and you got confirmation, well, then you'll have to do an MTD return.
Lovely. Thank you very much for that. Gary says, what happens if I get a VAT code wrong? If you make a mistake and declare a submission as 0% VAT and it should be 20% VAT?
Okay, so the way it works in QuickBooks is if you submit your return, those figures are essentially locked down because that is what's gone into HMRC. Therefore, if you find that there was a mistake or you need to make changes, you should put through those changes at the correct date, so the date they happened. And what QuickBooks will do is it will include the changes in your next VAT return, in addition to showing that information in an exception report. So as part of the normal process and the reports that you would view, look at the exception report and check those items. Now, if it's a very large amount, and the difference is very large, and I believe the threshold is around 10 grand, you will need to make a declaration to HMRC. So what I would ask you to do is consult your maybe a tax advisor if the amount exceeds the threshold. But in terms of just purely from a software point of view, the way QuickBooks will deal with it is it will include any changes to a filed VAT return in the following VAT return.
Lovely, thank you very much for that. Alistair says, yeah, and again, you might have noticed there's not many QuickBooks questions in here. We're testing your accounting knowledge this morning, Rochelle. Okay. Alistair says, I've recently moved to QuickBooks and loving it so far from other accounting software. Some of my invoices and receipts will be in the other software for the next period. What's the best way for me to deal with it?
In the other software, does he mean the other software from the previous period? Because if he's using QuickBooks, I would assume that he's put everything in. So actually, it might bring us on to the bridging solution. Essentially, you should try and get all the information in QuickBooks, especially for that VAT period. That means you can do the standard VAT submission from this screen. If you moved from another software, maybe you want to, and you have maybe 20 or 30 invoices that needed to be added to QuickBooks, we actually have a tool, and I'm just going to show you. It's in import data, and it's actually to import invoices in bulk. Okay, so if you're trying to get a lot of data into QuickBooks and you want to move it in one go, maybe take a look at that import data option. So that's the most straightforward, but What I can show you next is actually the bridging solution. And maybe that's an option for somebody who has partial data in QuickBooks but still needs to be MTD compliant. So could I maybe move on to the bridging solution? I can show you that. Yeah, and maybe the question might come up again, but I think it might explain a little bit more. So as I said, I can't use this company for anything else again, so I'm going to move on to a different company, but one that will look very similar. So in this company, I'm going to use the bridging solution. Now, the bridging solution allows you to submit your MTD return, submit your VAT return in an MTD compliant way through the use of a spreadsheet. So I'm going to go to taxes on the left navigation again. And you're going to see that in this file, I've kind of skipped a couple of steps. MTD is already turned on. I'm just going to show you a spreadsheet that I've prepared. Okay, so here is my VAT return. So basically, the important information here is that I've got the 9 boxes. If there was nothing else on this spreadsheet, only these 9 boxes, I would be able to use it to submit my VAT return. Another thing to notice is there are a couple of different sheets on this Excel sheet as well. So you can see client VAT return is the sheet I'm in. That's the 9 boxes. So I'm going to import that spreadsheet into QuickBooks to submit my VAT return. So you can see I've got my open return there. This time, because I'm using the bridging, instead of the submit return option, I'm going to click the drop down arrow next to it. Then I'll find this option that says submit with a spreadsheet. So when I click submit with a spreadsheet, it will allow me now to bring the spreadsheet in. It's giving me a bit of information about what needs to be on my spreadsheet, and then gives me a link to find out more information about digital record keeping. So I'm going to click browse, and then I'm going to find my spreadsheet, and I'm going to click next. Then I need to map the right columns. So remember what sheet it was on. It was on the client VAT return, and the box 1 was E7. Okay, so E7. Just want to confirm that. You can see box 1 was, of course, in E7. Now, actually, because they were all in a row, you'll notice if I go back to my QuickBooks file, it's just actually picked up the trend from there. So the net VAT to pay is that 109,352. Okay, so the spreadsheet is my final source of truth. That is the information that is sent to QuickBooks, the figures in those 9 boxes. So I click review return, and I tick that I declare the information is true and complete. Okay, so that's the figures locked down. I declare the information is true and complete. Now I'm going to submit to HMRC. Again, we wait for the connection. You won't see a receipt number today, but you will see it in the live accounts. Okay, and the thing on screen just reminds you, it could take up to 30 seconds, slightly longer if HMRC is busy. But as you can see on my screen, it's been accepted. In the live accounts, you'll see a receipt number, and also you'll get a confirmation number, or you'll get a confirmation email for whoever submits it. So I click done, and I've managed to submit my VAT return in an MTD compliant way. Okay, so that's the bridging solution. So the bridging solution, who is it for? Well, it is for anyone who maybe somebody could have no information in QuickBooks Online. Okay, so they maybe are completely using spreadsheets and they need a solution immediately to be able to submit their VAT return through QuickBooks. So they can actually sign up for QuickBooks and submit with a spreadsheet. It is also suitable for someone who has partial data in QuickBooks. Now, it sounds like there's a couple of people on this webinar who don't have all the information in QuickBooks. If you can get it all onto QuickBooks, great. If you can't for some reason, you can maybe use the bridging solution to tie you over until all your information is in there. But that's the bridging solution. So I don't know, is there any questions coming up on that?
Yeah, so just a thing on the questions, folks. There's an awful lot of questions coming in that are kind of generic QuickBooks questions rather than VAT and MTD related. So unfortunately, we can't deal with all of those today. However, what I will do is in that email that you're going to receive about an hour after we finish today. I'll make sure that there are links to our webinars page and to our classroom training, because it sounds like there's quite a lot of you that have got some more generic QuickBooks questions rather than MTD and VAT specific. And unfortunately, we just can't deal with all of those today. But we definitely have webinars and training sessions available for those of you that may be new to QuickBooks. So I'll make sure you get all of those bits of information in the email that will come to you after today's session. Darren says, if we're using bridging, do we need to activate this somewhere in QuickBooks, similar to how we have to activate MTD, or is this automatic once MTD is active?
Good question. So once you turn on MTD, so remember the process that I went through where we turned it on and we went to the HMRC website. Once you have done that, you will then have the option submit with a spreadsheet. So there's no additional feature to turn on. Once MTD is turned on, so you've gone through the OAuth process, you've turned on MTD, you will have that option submit with a spreadsheet, and it's available in the Simple Start Essential and Plus licenses of QuickBooks.
Fantastic. So it's there in all of them. It's just using that different access point when you get down to the MTD bit, Darren. Claudia says, can we use the spreadsheet method all the time? It just seems loads simpler.
So you can, as long as HMRC allow a bridging solution. So we will always provide the bridging solution. Now, one thing you should bear in mind, there are two parts to MTD. There is submitting your VAT return via financial management software, and there's also keeping a digital record of your information. And the thing about QuickBooks is if you use it in the standard way, we will help you keep a digital record. If you just use the bridging, then you have to think of another way to keep a digital record. So in QuickBooks, the advantage of doing it the standard way is you can put the transactions on the system, you can add attachments, you can keep a backup. So we like to think that the standard solution kind of gives you everything. The bridging solution will work for you, but you will have to also consider, okay, how else am I going to keep a digital record? And the other thing I would say is there are huge advantages to QuickBooks beside MTD. So for example, getting information on the system using banking, so linking your bank accounts, it's saving a lot of people so much time. So what I would say to you is if you're already using QuickBooks to use the bridging solution, like take a look at some of the other features that people are getting so much value from, and I think you'd benefit from them.
Nice, thank you for that. Victoria says, and you may have slightly answered it there, when using the bridging option, do you have to include every sheet to your workbook, or is it okay to have a single sheet with the 9 boxes on?
Oh, just the 9 boxes. Mine happen to have the other sheets, but you just need the 9-box summary in order to use that bridging to submit with a spreadsheet. Yeah, just the 9 boxes.
Thank you. Shoyab says, for the bridging option, does it take the whole of the VAT return from the spreadsheet?
No. So again, it's just the 9-box summary, just the figures in the 9 boxes.
Cool. Okay. Just bear with me because I'm trying to work out the MTD and the VAT. Mandy says, what does QuickBooks do with the difference between the original VAT return and the bridging version?
Okay, so if, let's say there's no data in QuickBooks, essentially QuickBooks will journal in the kind of adjustments in order to make it work. So your final source of truth is your Excel spreadsheet. QuickBooks will then look at what's in the system. If there's nothing there, it'll journal in the figures. And actually, if you look in your recent transactions, you can actually review those journal entries and just confirm that you're satisfied with how they appear. Then what it does, which is quite clever, is if you had half of the data in there, QuickBooks will look at half of the data that's in there, and then it will just create a kind of bridge between the data that's there and how to get to the final figure. So again, you'll see the journal entries in the recent transactions that take you from the detail that was in there up to what needs to go through in your VAT return.
Lovely, fantastic. And Holly's just asked a similar sort of question on that, so hopefully that's worked for you as well, Holly. Toby says, does QuickBooks minus the amount in box 8 in the submission form to give you a total to pay?
Oh, that's testing me now in my boxes. I will I would have to have a look down, to be honest. I'll see. I can't go through it there. I'd have to see how it works exactly. It might take me a little bit. It might be something that he might need to test himself. So you guys have access to a sample company in QuickBooks as well. So if you take a look at your sample company, it's at tinyurl.com/UK QBO demo, as in UK QuickBooks Online demo. If you go in there, actually, he could do a little bit of a play around and just work it out. I could do it, but I just don't think I'll get it done on the webinar.
Yeah, no problem. We'll put that URL into the email as well that we send out to everybody, so you can find it later on. Okay, if Darren says, if we're using the retail scheme for VAT, would it be best to avoid using QuickBooks for invoices due to the complexity of marking up prices for VAT, etc.?
I think that's a choice and maybe something to speak to your kind of maybe accountant or your financial advisor about. I know that some businesses and some accountants have a workaround that they find works well for them in QuickBooks for that particular scheme, and they choose to use the standard approach. So it's really what we call I think they call it the path of least resistance. I think you need to work out what's going to work best for you. And if you decide that using the bridging solution will help you with that instead of trying to find a workaround in QuickBooks, that's fine. But I would just maybe speak to an advisor about it. You could always start on the bridging, and as you become more familiar with QuickBooks, if you decide then to move on to a standard approach, that would be fine.
Fantastic. Kathy says, what is the adjustment section on the taxes page used for?
So is that one? Okay, so the adjustments can be used for a special scheme. So I think where you've got the various boxes. So some people use those adjustments. For example, there's a partial exemption scheme. And what people do there is they carry out a calculation and they work out if there's an element of their VAT return where the VAT cannot be reclaimed, they will adjust it. And then they will put the adjustment maybe to a non-reclaimable VAT account on their profit and loss. Now, again, I'd say if you're using adjustments, it would be important to consult with your tax advisor just to confirm. But that's how they're used by some businesses.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you for that. Hey, Rochelle, top job in terms of answering all those questions. Can you just do me a favor? Can you just go to the quickbooks.co.uk main webpage? As I said, we've had loads of questions just around normal use of QuickBooks. So what I wanted to do, folks, was if you just go to your normal quickbooks.co.uk page and then go up to Learn and Support, as Rochelle's just highlighting now, you'll see that there's all sorts of different support available to you, from our Getting Started videos. We have some classroom training available. We have a whole host of webinars that are all free that you can use. There's help articles, there's our community page, there's all the product updates. So for those of you that may be new to the product, you'll see that there's a whole host of support available to you there. So that's just from going to the main QuickBooks page and then going to Learn and Support from there. Okay, I'm just going to quickly take a look and see if there's any other VAT questions on there. And I'm not seeing any, so I'm just going to quickly throw out the final poll for you. And the final poll question is, having just attended the webinar today, do you now feel more confident about submitting for Making Tax Digital using QuickBooks Online? So do you now feel more confident about submitting for Making Tax Digital using QuickBooks Online? And I know that some of you, or lots of you I can see, are having problems with your HMRC side of things. But once you get through that, then how do you feel about actually the actual submission of MTD through QuickBooks Online? And I can see that 75% of you have voted so far. So I'm just going to close that one up there and I'll share those results out. Fabulous. Okay, 92% of you say yes, feeling more confident, which is great news. For the 8% that aren't, then obviously take a look at all of those extra training materials that we have available for you from the Learn and Support area. Also, maybe take a look back at the video recording that you'll receive in around about an hour's time, and hopefully it will answer some of those questions for you from there. Alternatively, give our customer success team, our care team, a call as well. You can find the information of how to call them from within the product. And apart from that, I would just like to thank you all for attending today. You'll see on the screen at the moment, there's a whole host of different MTD information available to you off that main quickbooks.co.uk website. So if you are still unclear on a few things, then feel free to dive in there and take a look, and I'm sure that you'll find the information that you need from there. Okay, thank you very much for your time and attention today. Rochelle, thanks very much for dealing with the technical problems and getting us all through that nice and comfortably.
Okay, thanks very much. Thanks for joining us.
And we will see you very soon, folks, for our next webinar. As I said, go to that Learn and Support page. You'll see there's a whole host of stuff available for you to sign up so you can get to know QuickBooks better. Apart from that, thanks for your time and attention, and we'll see you soon.